evidently Gibby went out to try to go back to get his horse, but he was shot. He was so wounded he couldn't do it. He came back to the door and tried to get them to let him in, and they shot him through the door, and he only went out about 50 yards and died there. And that was a case. That's my story about that. I don't know. They had a case, had him in court, but I don't know whether they ever put anything on him or not. But this was the girl that was down there, and this kid wanted me to come in and visit with her, and I wouldn't go in. But, then he quit me. He left me, and I had to do that 9 days fire all alone.
It took 9 days for it to burn?
9 days to fire, burning nine days. And I had to gather wood part of the time because we didn't have enough wood to burn it all that way. But I couldn't sleep, you see. I did go to sleep once and woke up, and the fire was just about out, but not quite. And I got it started again, and it completed the burning of it because I couldn't get. I got Gunnar Peterson to come down. Bray couldn't come for some reason. His horses were busy, and he had his own job to do. But I got Gunnar Peterson to come down. His uncle or some relative of his, Swanson, I think his name was, he had a house in the big bluff there. He had a 2-story, wonderful big log house, all set up on a stone foundation without any lime at all. The stone was just fitted together, and he wanted lime to fill it, and so Gunnar come down. And by the time we loaded up one little load down at the bottom, I had made a road down. See, it was way down. See, from where that little creek came in at the top, it was quite a long way down, and then my kill was down in the bottom there, and I had to make a way so they could drive down in there. And that took a lot of I didn't have all the tools was necessary. I made a road so he got down there, and he got a little small little load on, and tried to get back, and he nearly upset himself. He was scared out of his wits. He wouldn't go back for any more, he said. But they did get lime for his requirements, and they brought up enough for what I needed. And I never got to use mine, but they did use it for the liming of the first school. That was my lime was used for plastering around that first Blue Sky school. And eventually I didn't tell you about that. I went in. See, Homesteader was allowed 10,000 feet of lumber. You could go and take out that and get it milled, and I did that along with a neighbor, and I had it hauled out, all but some dry stuff that I wanted to be dressed, cleaned for finishing lumber. That was left at the mill, and I went out, and it turned out that I went overseas. And first of all, Dodge wasn't going to let Bray bring back the rest of that lumber, but eventually it got it all out, all right, accepting that dry stuff, and that I got home after I came back from overseas. But he had sold my lumber in the meantime, so he made up my dry lumber with dead stuff, and the knots all jumped out of it. It was punk stuff. But anyway, I had my log house, 2-story, and I didn't have the upstairs floored, but it was a 2-story house, and I had a special roof on it and everything. Mr. Bray helped me put the roofing on it, just target for roofing. But I had it fire guarded, and then I had gone out and was back in Manitoba. I had the post office at Hillside Beach, all that time had gone by, and I had the post office at Hillside Beach, and my wife was there too, and I was renting my place to Bray, and I had him. Well, he grew some various crops on it. I have some pictures of nice oat crop he had on it, beautiful crop. And first of all, while I was overseas, I had him plant Timothy, and he got one crop of Timothy seed off it, as good, worthwhile as much as grain. Incidentally, he couldn't sell the grain anyhow. There was no elevators or no railway. But the government at one stage of the game was paying us. They had a glut of grain on the market, and they paid us so much an acre not to plant the grain. And I got as good a return for not growing any grain as I did for grain. Well, but one of the seasons before I went back to Manitoba, I had a crop of barley. Better shut this off.
Oh, you can keep talking.
And I had this crop of barley, and only a small thing, about a load and a half or 2 loads on a sleigh with a good rack. But the thrashing machine wasn't going to come anywhere near me. It was Mr. Cook that had a thrashing machine. He was threshing over in Waterhole country, and then winter came on and snow, and he wasn't going to be able to get to me. Although he sent one of his hired men to me to pay him his what was due him, and that was to be part of the cost of my thrashing. But later on, he sent word for me to haul my stuff down to Hemstock store, because if he managed to get that far with his threshing outfit, that was as far as he'd get. And I hauled it down there, and he didn't come, and then they sent word to me, and I had to come down and fence my stuff. But the blacksmith, Hemstock's blacksmith there, had a big ox, and he broke the fence, and they ate up the whole thing, my whole crop. And I guess Hemstock, I don't for sure whether Hemstock married that daughter of that blacksmith. I believe he did. She was working for him, the store. But that's Hemstock. Had, I was interested in the promotion of what do you call it? Making the country dry, eliminating all the sale of liquor. See, Peace River was dry when I went there. That's why the police were up there, was to keep the liquor out of the country. But we managed among us to promote the prohibition in the whole of Canada except Quebec. And I was principal secretary on that work, putting up signs and stuff all over. We managed to get the whole country dry, all but Quebec. When I went overseas, when I finally went in the army overseas, when we got down as far as Quebec on our way to Halifax, the guys were hoping to be able to get off and go and get some gin, but the train didn't stop long enough for them to do that. Boy, oh boy. And when we landed overseas, I know this is not anything to do with Peace River, but when we got overseas, the British, the English government had a canteen in every soldier's camp. And then our padres, incidentally, submitted to the issuing of rum to the soldiers in the trenches. I can start in and tell you a whole story about that now. That's too much.
When you came back from overseas, what did you do?
I came to Peace River. I came first of all to my old home at St. Mary's and visited there, and then I visited at Sudbury and at Naperville very briefly. And my cousin was out here yet at Peace River, out at Burnt River. I came up here and Bray finally, his renting charges was he was supposed to do some more breaking on my property. That was part of his house, what he was to do for the rent. But I finally sold the place to Bray, and then I was so hard up for money that I cut the whole thing and didn't let him go without any interest at all, and settled up with it because he managed to go to some loan company and got the balance of the money coming to me, and I had to have it. My children were coming back in Manitoba.
Well, when did you get married?
And 29, 8th of June, exactly 10 years after the signing of peace. We had the armistice in 1918, but the signing of peace was 10 years later, in 28. And when the peace was signed, 10 years afterwards, I was...
Where were you married?
At my uncle's place at Naperville. And Mr. Buntain and his wife came out from Winnipeg and brought Gwen's sister along with them out there. And I came out from Winnipeg, bought some flowers for the wedding, and got out there, and we had a wedding and caught a train back into Winnipeg. And we had to hurry to catch the train at Arden, and my cousin drove me into Arden, and we were in Arden station a few minutes before the train came after all. I left my suitcase in the station.
Oh.
And I had to, when we got out to, as far as Keys, the first station east of Arden, the train stopped and I got permission to phone, and I phoned back and I caught Mr. Buntain and had him come by Arden and pick it up, although he had intended to come by Naperville. But he brought my case into Winnipeg. But in the meantime, in Winnipeg, Mr. Buntain got us booking at a hotel there, and my suitcase wasn't there. I didn't have any pajamas. I had to go and buy some pajamas. I went into one of those stores on Main Street that I thought I was buying a pajamas, and when I got home it was only the one piece, and they I had to go back and argue with them. Oh, that was the piece that they sold. That was the price on it. Only one piece, and they didn't have one to match.
Well, where did you meet Grandma?
Grandma?
Yeah, where did you meet? To the first time you met her?
I can't just remember, but we had been engaged for a year or so before we were married. You know, I think Gwen was working in Winnipeg for some various people, but when I got out to Victoria Beach, to my garden out there, I bought a house that Underwood. I had been working for a carpenter named Underwood, and he had a Donalda, they called it. It's a frame with a tent in it, you know, a frame thing. You can take it down and in about an hour you can take the whole thing down and put it back up again. It was 18 by 12, I think it was. I had a bed in it and so on. I bought that on a jump. And Grandma came out and lived us out there for, it was awful nice for her. See, it was out right on the face of the bay where all the airplanes landed. That was the biggest airport in Canada at that time. They had no airfields yet, you see. They had to land on water. And all the planes would land out in that bay. That bay was, but Hillside Beach is one side. You know it. You've been there. But who was there? But that's the place where Arthur lost his teeth in the bay there. But Grandma had a good summer there. And she went back and was living with various people in Winnipeg. Lived with us out at Hillside Beach there after Arnold was born. I have a picture of her with Arnold and the dogs. Yes, there was a man that was a member of the church, was working for the post office. It was him that got me to take the post office out.
Grandpa's recording.
I got all I can tell now.
All you can tell for now?
And